I don't see you moving either,
Um,
but you look very pensive.
well, thank you. Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome.
I don't
But
know
we
how
can
to-
hear you.
Well, that's good.
We can hear you. So what we've got here is Mr. Atkinson. And Jim, I'm excited to have you on the call tonight. I really am, because I'm going to give a little bit of your bio. You'll probably jump into a little bit more detail, but a fifth generation Montanan, there aren't many of those around. Born in Helena, raised in Ronan and Helena, went to the University of Montana. I did as well, but several of my family members went to that other school over there in James Coco country. You received a degree in psychology, you got a teaching certificate, and then you moved to Washington for 3 years, came back to Montana, got a master's degree from the University of Oregon, taught for 10 more years. And I have to say, I taught for 3 years. So the fact that you made it 10 is astounding. You raised 2 sons, worked as a salesman for Altel Business Communications, directed Flathead Care Center, director of Flathead County of Agency on Aging for 19 years. And during that time, you had the distinct, I like how you put this, Jim, the distinct honor of serving your community as a member of Kiwanis, your local church. And for, listen to this, people, 29 years, Kalispell City Councilman. And that to me is the huge part of the story here. As a retiree, you're still enjoying community activities. You exercise at the Summit. I actually managed that facility for 3 years, attending and serving at Family Life Christian Church, volunteering at Northwest Montana History Museum. You run a nonprofit organization, Senior Mobile Home Repair Program, that helps seniors in mobile homes with needed repairs. And you enjoy the lives of 4 children, 8 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, most of whom live in the area. And I can tell you, everybody out there listening to this recording, those of you live, the reason I'm still involved in politics right now is because of my children and grandchildren. My children are adult, but they never stop being your kids. And I am gravely concerned for the next generation coming up. And Jim, I look at your background of service to your community for all those decades. Not only is it admirable, but it's something that we need to follow in the footsteps of. But I asked you to speak tonight about your time on the council specifically and the changes that you saw. So I'm going to give you the floor, and if you'll bring all that to bear, and I'm going to have a ton of questions for you before we're through, I'm sure. And just so you know, the person live on the line, James, I hope you pipe in here. James is running for House District, not United States. It is United States, but the Montana House of Representatives, representing, I'm not sure of the district over there in Bozeman, Gallatin Valley. But we need as many people as we can to jump in there. You want to put that out there, James?
I was just going to say it's House District 65, Rod. Thanks.
House District 65. I can't keep them all straight. You know, I can get the county straight, but not all the districts.
Well, there are 100 of them, so
I'm glad you remember. All right. So, Mr. Atkinson, if you would please give us a little bit of history, what you've seen, the changes, and what to expect with government service.
Okay. Well, I apologize for not being able to move on the screen. I don't know what my problem is, but the 29 years that I spent there, I was there beginning in 1988, and the world was a whole lot different then. But we had a city council, a mayor form of government, and as we moved along, we felt like it was a bit of a problem that way. What happened was, or the way things ran, is the mayor was the mayor, and then each of us had a couple of committees to be involved in, and those committees were chaired by the person that was a part of like the chief of police, the head of community development, et cetera, and they would explain to the committee what they needed to explain and ask their questions and ask for money, etc. And then the committee's responsibility was to speak to all of the board at all of the commissioners at the meetings, and then decisions were to be made. Well, the problem I saw with that is if you had a good department head, they were very convincing, and they knew that they had to be uh, campaigning more or less for for their department. And so there was a lot of give and take and competition and things like that. And we felt like uh, we just didn't have a manager, someone that could manage the whole thing. We didn't know whether it was best to spend money on the cops and not on the parks or whatever. And we knew that we needed a manager to balance those things out. So um, the council got together, several of us on the council, and we had, I hate to admit this, clandestine meetings where more than the quorum was there, but it was not announced. But anyway, we had meetings in Wayne Savreu's basement and did a lot of um, work in that manner, went out and tried to sell the idea of city manager form of government. Now, the city manager form of government was different, but we tried to make it as undifferent as possible so that people wouldn't get excited and vote it down. So the point we tried to make is we need professional management of the city. And as you know now, we were successful. And that was probably one of the biggest and best things that ever happened to the city of Kalispell. And I felt one of the things that I am proud of. So that was city manager form of government. There was another time before city manager form of government when we were tasked with the task of determining whether gambling should be in the city of Kalispell. And if I remember correctly, that meeting lasted until 4 o'clock in the morning and was a very contentious, very difficult. What essentially happened was the city decided that the revenue for gambling was a great boon for the city. And so the city got the 10% or whatever it is of the revenue for gambling, which turned out to be $1 million or thereabouts, which was big money for the city. Well, as things turn out, the state decided that they would, that the smaller communities weren't getting the chance to benefit with that gambling money because they didn't have gambling establishments and they didn't have tourists that would come in and spend the money. So the state took the money and divided it out into all of the communities. And we still got some money, but it wasn't enough money to take care of all of the problems, in my opinion, all of the problems that gambling caused. So that was probably a bad thing that happened, in my opinion, but it exists and we're still there doing it. What were some other things that you wanted to see me chat about there, Rod?
Well, I want to comment real quick, just because, we've got someone who's going to be going into state government, and we're going to speak this into existence. And I think it's important, just what you said here about the gambling, when you've got state interference over local control, how that can skew things so much, even though they think they're going to come in and help, it actually didn't help, and so sometimes there's a lesson here, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I'll leave that there. That's just my quick commentary on that, because I always think local control is better. The people on the ground know best. But I guess what I would like to the city manager form of government was important, I think, in my eyes, because it turned the business of running government into a business. It had to be looked at as a business, and you didn't have all the infighting. But you have sat through, and I don't know how many mayors, in 29 years, how many mayors did you go through? How many other councilmen did you go through? Because you're probably one of the longest seated council people in the state of Montana. And you got to see all those personalities come in. And I guess I'd like to know your impression of when someone comes in, when a new mayor comes in, even with the city manager form of government, we know they still have a way of driving their agenda. And so how did you navigate those agenda changes with the new personalities that came in, especially with different ideologies, a liberal ideology versus a conservative ideology, for example?
Wow. Went through a lot of mayors and a lot of city managers and a lot of other council people. But I'd have to say that the localness of the government and the fact that it was you were elected on a nonpartisan basis helped to smooth things over, I think. Yeah, we all had different opinions, but it wasn't a Republican opinion or a Democratic opinion. It was a what's best for the city of Kalispell opinion. And you had to respect that. I didn't agree with everybody, but I certainly had to respect the fact that they were there. They were spending their time. I didn't get to see Monday Night Football for 29 years, but they were spending their time and energy to try and do what they thought was best for the city. And I think overall, the closer the government is to the people, the better off we are. And the nonpartisan, when they were voting for me, they didn't know whether I was a liberal or a conservative. Half the time I didn't know. But we were looking at things saying, maybe this is best for the community. There were times when we thought maybe it was best and the bottom fell out of it. I can think of one example where our city manager felt that it was a real good idea, and we all agreed before 2007 that it was advantageous to send our sewer and water out beyond our boundaries in order to get more building in. It was important that we had more density in our city and in our county, because some of the septic systems were going by the wayside, and developers were willing to extend the sewer and water at their expense. And so we felt like that was a possibility, and we knew that we were going to grow, and thus it was one way to grow, and at the developer's expense. And thought that we would fill in and things like that. And boom, 2007 or 2008 hit, and the housing just went by the wayside, and we were sitting there kind of feeling like we were holding the bag. But today, all of that infill is happening. So it's a matter of waiting things out and seeing how things work, and after a long period of time, finding out that your decisions might not have been that bad after all. So, but anyway, as far as the contention and things are concerned, I think our city council and mayor have done a pretty good job of being civil to one another and making the best decisions possible. Now, I didn't agree with all of them. That airport situation, I really wanted to have that airport in there, but time will tell, and maybe it's the best thing. So that's my take on that, Rod.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's kind of good to hear. And I think we need to hear that, especially in today's divisive environment, that, other people do have an opinion and they have a right to that opinion, and at least hear them. Doesn't mean we still have to agree at the end of the day, but we have to find a way to work together. And time will tell. I have to say too that because you went at this for 29 years, and the other thing I wanted you to speak on, because I know what happened in your last election when you lost your last election, because I looked at the research and then it came out in the paper as well. You were still campaigning the way you campaigned for all those decades, for a couple of decades, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we had a newcomer come in, and by then everything had changed. And I think you had spent just under or around $800 on your local campaign, and your opponent, who unseated you after 29 years, spent $8,000 on a city council race. I think that was probably your record too. But what kind of changes have you noticed in just campaigning in general? And again, I think it's important to understand this for anybody running for office, because you represent the ground game. This is city council where you have a ward and you know your neighbors, you know your neighborhood. And even after all those years of, I would like to think that we're entrenched. That's why the incumbent usually has an advantage. But how do you navigate, how do you view the change that really happened in campaigning?
Well, when it came to campaigning in my day, we had a ward. We walked the ward. We knocked on every door. There were years when I literally knocked on every door. And people, I think, appreciated that. We talked a little. I had door hangers for those that I didn't get to meet and things. But I think people appreciated that. When the internet came, when Facebook came, when all of that social media came, I was not prepared to get involved in social media to the degree that it was needed. And I lost the election as a result of it. My opponent was adept in social media, spent money taking it to the bank there, and won. I think my form of campaigning is totally gone. The younger generation does not meet face to face. They meet via social media and Facebook and interaction with Instagram, etc. What would I say? It's a kind of a blip, an immediate statement. Here it is. Buy it, buy me, and that's a totally different way of going about campaigning. Now, is it better? Well, it's more effective, that's for sure. But more and more, I think we need to be moving back to discussion between people and understanding people's opinions, whether we believe in them or not. I had a cousin who lived in Washington, D.C., or just out of Washington, D.C., and she came over and she said, "What is it that people like about Donald Trump? I do not understand." And she asked me to explain that to her, and she listened. And I thought that was really something, a young lady listening to this and trying to get an understanding of another person's idea and ideology. And I thought that was superb. And I felt like, hey, I need to be listening to the opposite side and see where they're coming from. And that is what needs to be done on the state level, on the national level. I think it's still being done on the local level. So there's what needs to happen.
Do you think those meaningful conversations can happen through social media, or do you think that social media hinders that?
I think that, I definitely think that it can happen. And you know why? Because I think that there's moral people out there that still respect one another. And if they would go on to the social media and treat the media like they treat their neighbor, I think the internet can be a fantastic thing, but it takes morals, it takes integrity, and it takes responsibility on the part of the person that is not opening his mouth, but opening his Instagram. And they need to people need to respect other people's opinions, whether they're written or spoken. But I think it's a whole lot easier to understand someone and respect someone if you're looking at them, as opposed to if you're tweeting, because you can lose your integrity pretty easily that way.
Yeah, we actually had a marketing guru on as one of our guests, and part of what she said too is using video was so important in social media. It's not just the content of posting your thoughts in a paragraph of this or that. People just scroll right through that. They're not going to read, or they might read the first sentence and go beyond. But videos are engaging, and what you just said is really a good point to anyone campaigning in the modern age, that those videos, if you treat it like you're talking to a person, even if you're doing quick streaming things, that get that face-to-face feel for it, and maybe that's the way we can get our message out there more effectively.
Totally agree. And the more we can do that, the better off I think we're going to be. We need to utilize the media and the way that people are utilizing it. But once again, we need to have integrity. We need to have discipline. We need to look inside ourselves and say, are you the type of person that you want to know? And if I'm the type of person that if I feel good about myself and how I treat other people, then I'm a winner there. It's just so important to have personal integrity.
One of the things that we've heard over and over with people campaigning, and what Jim and I have taught people, is you have to be authentic. And that's where your integrity, you're talking about integrity. If you're authentic and you have integrity, that's what people are going to get. That's what people are going to see. And if you can't get that in the face-to-face, and usually you can, when you knock on a door and someone opens the door, you get that feel right away. That first impression really is there when you're door knocking, when you're doing a ground game and getting out there to introduce yourself to people. And being able to unlock that bit of personal vulnerability, but it can't be fake. It's not salesmanship, it's authenticity, and I think that's why you were so successful all the years you did run, Jim, because you were a man of integrity and you were authentic. There were no errors, there was no arrogance. And so I'm going to leave that topic for just a second, and I'm going to talk about legacy. I'd like you to talk about legacy because I had a chance to serve with you, and I know that when we were looking at new developments and everything that fit into our long-range plans for infill and controlling the urban sprawl and all that stuff, you always looked at every new development with connectivity. And that was my big takeaway from working with you, was how you were so adamant about looking at all the plans and looking at how that mattered to you. And I can stand up on Lone Pine and look out over the entire Flathead Valley, the community of Kalispell, and I can see your fingerprints as it connects all those new developments. And there's plenty of them, right? Thousands of new ones. And over the course of 29 years, many thousands. Speak to that a little bit, how that vision was something that was important to you and how you managed to string that through the tapestry of 29 years.
Well, you can see on 93 and on 2 and all of these how busy that traffic is. If there was a way to get some of that traffic off of there, we'd all be better off. So the connectivity was a logical thing for me. You know, Hutton Ranch, and then right behind Sportsman, there's just a little road that connects Hutton Ranch with that other area there. I told them they ought to call it an Atkinson Road, you know, but because I was just adamant that those two big development areas needed to connect, so that when I got off and went to Walmart and I wanted to go to TJ Maxx or something, I didn't have to get back on the highway. And so I think there was a lot of that. Another one was, I can't remember what the name of the subdivision was, but it was up around Sherry Lane and all of that. Those developments, they developed at different times, but they needed to interact with one another. And you can drive through those developments, one to the next, to the next, to the next, without having to get on the highway and jump back in. I learned that from some folks. It was Arrow was the name of the group, and they taught me a lot about community management, civil management, and why we connect things, why we have alleys, why we put the garages in the back and the porches in the front, because there's an opportunity for you to sit there on the porch and talk with your neighbors. That's just an important thing, and I was adamant about seeing that happened in our community. Didn't always win, but we tried to put that concept to the developers so that they would comply and have a livable development.
Well, I have to say that, again, talking about legacy, when you have something that is that important, and it's nice that you've given credit to someone else and you even remember who it was that taught you the importance of those things. But when you were there and passing that on, even just through watching you, you know, and listening to you in work sessions, I understood, I got it too. And all of a sudden then there's two of us, you know, pushing back, and we know what it's like, because developers don't always want to do it the way the city wants it done, because it adds costs and time and all that kind of thing. You know, when we want more connectivity, and that means they're going to have to move this and move that, and it changes all the plans. It's not always, it's an uphill battle sometimes, but standing your ground as not even a legislator at that point, we're almost like in the executive branch, because it's like, this is what's happening. You know, this is what you're going to have to do. But it is important to build those communities that way. And when you stood your ground and passed that information on, it matters, you know, and then the community gets to see how and why you're making those decisions. And again, I think we both lost a few battles, but I think we ultimately won the war when I look at what we've managed to accomplish in one little community that's managing to handle the growth, not without pains, but it's there. So what's your takeaway, Jim, on community service? Because no one's getting rich on city council. And unless you're in the United States Senate, I don't think anyone's getting rich being a politician. So what's your takeaway for people? Why get involved? Why stay involved? Besides the integrity issue, what do you get? How do we inspire that next generation to do what you've done?
Well, I think some things are happening in schools too, where you're required to volunteer in the community. There are certain parts of this community that do that with their employees or with their students or whatever. Volunteer to do something, and not for the money, but I think churches, I think our city council, I think our clubs, everybody needs to be talking with younger people and themselves about giving back to the community. So many people, or some people, I think, hey, I pay my taxes, they owe it to me. Well, your taxes are not paying for everything in the community. A prime example is the museum. Man, there is so much volunteer activity in that museum. It would not exist if there weren't people volunteering to make that happen. And is that museum an integral part and a enjoyable part of our community? Yes, it is. And you see that a prime example of something that just happened that's not good is we're not having a parade for the fair this year. Why? Because no group stepped up and said, we'll do it. Granted, it's a lot of work, and but if we all pull together, we can do it. Well, people have to say to themselves, this community is being good to me, and I need to give back. And that's really what it is a whole mindset. I know, I'll give you an example. Pam Kennedy Carbonari, when she was mayor, there was some entities that came into the community that were pretty negative. And she helped to put together a campaign called Not in My Community, or Not My Town. And they looked at and portrayed positive things in our community, and we're not going to allow the negative to come in. And that was a great campaign, I thought, and people felt good about it. The Kiwanis, the Rotary, the Knife and Fork clubs that join, those people that join, not only for interaction, but to do something to help the community. That's the attitude that this community needs to have, or it'll end up like any other rotten community. And we've got good people here, and we've got young business people that want to give back to the community. And it's just neat to see. We have a positive attitude here. That's why it's great to live here. And when people come here, they need to know that we're people that care about one another and that care about our community. And if we can keep that attitude at the forefront, we're going to have a good community, no matter how many people come in. I know a lot of, people used to go down to Arizona so that they could get rid of all of their asthma and stuff like that. And they bring their plants down, so they end up having the same allergies and things like that down there because they brought their world that was hurting them, brought it back to another world. Well, people need to bring our attitude to our world. When they come, they're going to have to speak with one another and say, howdy, partner, howdy, fella, how are you? And respond to one another, because that's what Kalispell people do. They say hi on the street.
I'm going to respond to that real quick because number one, I agree. But two, we and James, you're on the call tonight representing the Gallatin Valley, and the Flathead Valley, and Gallatin are the two fastest growing communities in the state right now. And we are getting that influx. And for the last 20 years, I've been saying that the United States is the melting pot of the world, but Kalispell is the melting pot of the United States. And now I can say that Gallatin Valley and the Flathead Valley are the melting pots of the United States. This is where people are fleeing to. It's Montana as a whole, but there are a couple of bastions that people are coming into, and that's really the crux of it. And here's the thing. We don't get to put a fence up around our city. We don't get to put a fence up around our county, and we don't get to put a fence up around our state. So those people who come in are a part of our community, and we have to figure out how to embrace them and endow them with our integrity and with our culture.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of it, because a lot of them are escaping, face it, an abusive relationship from the community they just left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you look at people that the incoming that are flocking into our valleys right now, they are like an abused spouse or an abused child, and you know, earning that trust back, because they probably don't trust anybody at this point. So I think we even have a bigger obligation, those of us who are putting ourselves out there to serve still. And I admire you, Jim. You didn't just get out of the political office, but you're still serving your community. And that's what I'm doing. You know, Jim and I both with the 1776, you know, I still serve on a board, you know, City County Health Board. There are still a plethora of boards for people to serve on, you know, in their communities. So, and that's still related to government and governing the communities. And I think that's so important, to get people engaged and let them be a part of the community, not necessarily part of solving a problem, just be part of the community, part of the conversation. And your whole life represents that, Jim. And I want to thank you, number one, for your service. I want to thank you again for being on the call and sharing some of that insight with us. There are several people I'd heard over the years saying, well, we should have term limits for city council people as well. You know, I heard that many times, like that person's run too many times, et cetera. And it's like, at the local level, really, if you're not doing a good job, you're going to be out anyway. You know, I think you were out because of a campaign strategy, and times had shifted. And that's a good point to remember on this call tonight. But it's so important to know that at the local level, we don't have problems of graft and bribery and things like that. It doesn't happen. I suppose it could, and in larger communities without oversight, proper oversight, I imagine it does happen. But in our smaller communities, we're held accountable not only by the law, but we're held accountable by our neighbors. And that's important. And even serving at the state level, the county level, or the state level, those issues are the same. They're one and the same. You know, our cities, our counties are the microcosm of the state. So anyone running for state office, I think, can learn from all these conversations as well. I know we got started late, so we didn't have as much comment on here. James Coco, you've got your hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself and give us your insights or ask a question to Jim.
Thanks, Rod. Jim, sorry, choking here. Jim, thank you for hopping on this call tonight. I really appreciate your insight. You're kind of a legend. I've heard of you for some time now. I'm way down here in Bozeman, but so thanks for coming on. And just for the record, I did graduate from the University of Montana also, even though I live in Bozeman. But so just real quick, Jim, you know, you've were an active in office for 30 years. So it would seem that maybe you found the secret recipe that maybe some of us haven't to winning elections. If you could give me, you know, one piece of advice to someone like me who's never been in this arena, what would you say?
Tell it like it is. What I mean by that is, when you make a decision, you need to know that why you made it. And when somebody disagrees with you for the decision that you made, you tell them why you made that decision. Whether they agree with that or not, they appreciate the fact that you thought through it and you made the decision based on the information that you had, and not based on who lined your pockets or who put the pressure on you or whatever. Um, that's real important. Know why you're making those decisions, and stick by it. And if you've got the integrity and if you're making the decisions with integrity, um, you're going to be criticized, of course, but you're going to be respected in the decisions that you make. So that would be my 2 bits.
Thank you, Jim.
I've lost the video. I've got the audio still, but if that's, I'm sorry that you can't see what I'm saying.
Well, I'm sure you're a strapping fella, but I can't see you though either. So
I can still see you, Jim. I can
Okay.
see a picture of you.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but that's me and technology. But
Well, we
anyway,
had technical issues on our end too, so
Okay.
can't just be you. Anything else as far as the campaigning? I think you kind of covered it, just being who you are and making a friend at the door.
Yeah.
You know, people liked you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I like them too. And people were really good to me as I was a city councilman. I didn't get any threats or anything like that, but because I think it's because people are generally nice folks, and I think as you go into state legislature, make sure that you know that people are nice folks and that they care as much as you do, and reason with them as much as possible. And um, it should not, if we're going to get anything done, we got to work together. And um, the art of compromise is very important. You can compromise on some things, but you can't compromise on integrity and morals and things like that. And so if you stand hard on those things, you're going to be respected. You may not get any legislation through, but you're certainly going to be respected um, for the stands that you make. There was a fella at our city council that anytime that we voted, gosh, what was it, in favor of something, well, he was there to let us know that we were doing the wrong thing in his sight, and he was polite, and I respected that. And there were times when I knew that the vote was going to go the other way, that I would vote in his favor because I respected him and I respected his point. I knew that the legislation was still going to go through, but that's people need to be heard and respected and appreciated. And if you'll do that when you're in the legislature, I think you'll go a long way.
Thanks, Jim. Well, again, I apologize for getting this call off the ground late. There were some things beyond our control on this end, so everything's not perfect, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there and the adaptability, and everyone will be able to catch this on the back end video anyway. Any last comments? I've got one wrap up I'm gonna do, but because it's just a couple of us here, I'll give you the opportunity to have the last words.
You go ahead, Jim. I've said more than I probably should say.
yeah, I just want to thank you both. I love these little forums, and I don't have a whole lot more. I would like to just you mentioned the divisiveness in America right now. It's here in Montana. I knocked on probably close to 2,000 doors for the primary. People are really, the morale is really shot right now. And I'm just wondering if, are we just kind of blowing smoke here, or can we really build the bridge back to, to bridge that divide? I sometimes wonder if we've gone, past that point of no return. I try to be optimistic, but it's, I don't know, feels pretty bad out there.
Well, if you speak with a clean conscience and a big heart, that is all you can do. But in so doing, you're going to affect people, for sure. I want to thank you, Rod, for asking me to do this, and it's nice to see a new potential legislator and to hear his heart too. So best of luck in Gallatin County, and if you know Chris Kukalski, well, tell him hi for me, will you?
All right, Jim. Thanks again.
Yeah, he was our city manager before he was yours. So that.
Well, I'm gonna end this with because I appreciate what you just said, James. That sometimes it seems like it are we too far gone, and there are moments throughout the day, depending on what I hear, what I see, that sometimes I feel that way. But I have to believe, and I have faith that what we're doing, I still believe that this is the best country in the world. And Jim, you said it, the reason we're doing this is because we're giving back. We're not doing this to get something. We're doing this to give back, because I have had a great life here in Montana. And I want to leave it as best as I can. And so I'm going to keep pushing forward. And in that regard, next week, we have a different angle here. We've got Scarlyn Valderez, who's going to be our guest next week. And she works with Parents Defending Education. It's a national grassroots organization working to reclaim our schools from activists imposing harmful agendas through networks and coalition building, investigative reporting, litigation, and engagement at local and state and national policy levels. And they're fighting indoctrination in the classroom and promoting the restoration of a healthy, non-political education for our kids. So we've got a national person who's, again, they don't think it's too far gone either. There are people who are still investing their time, their treasure, and their talent into giving back and making this better. So next week, and Jim, I'll talk to you later. We're going to get you into the 1776 on a regular basis here, so you can jump on the calls. Jim, is it okay if I pass on your email to James Coco?
Yes.
All right. I will text that over to you. I believe I've got that. I'll give you his email. I'll just text it to you, James.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Rod. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Hey, have a great evening. Thank you for hanging in there with us tonight, and pass the word. We're not done.
God bless everybody.
God bless you all. Thank you again, Mr. Atkinson. Appreciate everything.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
bet.
Thank you. And Rod.
Thank you.